Hello, my name is Ijaz Rehman. I am studying at University of Hertfordshire. This is my ID card and my student number is 24112285. Introduction. Today I will discuss whether a buyer in a commercial sales contract and lawfully refuse to continue with the agreement due to repeated failures by the seller to meet its contractual obligations. This issue falls under the Sale of Goods Act 1979 and relates to a dispute between Bob Decor Ltd and Wood Create Ltd. The central question is whether recurring breaches in an installment contract are significantly serious to allow the buyer to terminate the entire agreement. To address this issue, I will analyze the seller's duties, the breaches that occurred, the buyer's right under the Act, and the legal consequences arising from those breaches. Now I will talk about the commercial arrangement. The commercial arrangement Bob Decor Ltd. entered into an agreement to purchase 12 oak dining tables and 60 wooden chairs from Wood Create Ltd. Under the contract, the tables were required to be made of oak and have a length of 1.5 meters. The agreement also specified particular packaging requirements for the chairs. Instead of supplying all the goods in a single shipment, the parties agreed that delivery would occur in three installments. Cons- uh, Consequently, each installment formed a significant component of the overall contract. Now, I will talk about the problems with the first delivery. The first installment revealed a number of significant defects. The table supplied were made from an incorrect type of wood and did not meet the required dimensions. Furthermore, the number of chairs delivered was less than agreed and the packaging instructions were not followed. As a result, the goods supplied failed to match the contractual specifications. Compliance with contractual description. A fundamental requirement under the Sale of Goods Act 1979 is that goods must correspond with the description set out in the contract. In this case, the arrangement required oak tables measuring 1.5 meters in length. However, the first delivery failed to satisfy either of these conditions. The use of a different material can affect the product's quality, durability, appearance, and market value. Similarly, the dimensions of furniture are important because they influence its suitability for its intent purpose. Accordingly, Wood Create Ltd. breached an essential contractual requirement. Quantity errors. Quantity is a crucial aspect of commercial contracts. The agreement specified the number of tables and chairs to be supplied in each installment. Nevertheless, the first delivery included fewer chairs than required and shortage also occurred in the second installment. By failing to provide the agreed quantities, the seller denied the buyer part of the contractual benefit and caused operational difficulties for Bob Decor Ltd. Failure to follow packaging requirements. The contract also imposed clear obligations regarding packaging and delivery. The parties agreed that the chairs would be packed in boxes containing 10 chairs each, facilitating storage, transportation, and inventory management. Would Create Ltd. Failed to comply with this requirement by placing more chairs in each box than had been agreed. Although this breach may seem less significant, the defects relating to description and quantity it nevertheless constitutes a breach of the contract. The second delivery. The second installment resolved some of the earlier issues but still did not fully comply with the contract. The quantity delivered remained below the amount required under the agreement. This indicates that the problems were not isolated events but part of an ongoing patterns of inadequate performance. Has Bob accepted the goods? The seller may the seller may contend that the buyer accepted the defective goods and therefore lost the right to reject them. However, whether acceptance has occurred depends on the buyer's actions following delivery. There is no indication that Bob resolved the furniture, incorporated it into business operations, or otherwise behaved in a manner suggesting acceptance. The facts, the facts indicate that concerns were raised without delay. Consequently, Bob may still have the right to reject the goods and purpose appropriate legal remedies. Why does the installment contract matter? The installment nature of the contract is particularly important. If the contract involved only a single delivery, the legal assessment would be more straightforward. In installment contracts, however, the court must consider the overall pattern of performance. The first installment contained defects relating to description, quantity, and packaging, while the second installment also failed to satisfy the quantity requirements. These recurring shortcomings are containing inability to perform the contract properly rather than an isolated error. Termination of the contract. The law recognizes that repeated breaches in an installment contract may justify termination where they substantially affect the contract as a whole. Would Create Ltd repeatedly fail to fulfill important contractual obligations? Consequently, Bob Decor Ltd may reasonably lose confidence in the seller's ability to perform the remaining installment correctly. A reasonable commercial buyer could therefore be entitled to treat the contract as terminated before the final installment becomes due. Final consequences. If the contract is terminated, Bob may also seek damage uh, for loss for losses resulting from the breaches. The objective of damage is to place the buyer in the position they would have occupied had the contract been performed correctly. Such damage may include the additional expense of obtaining substitute goods and any foreseeable commercial losses caused by the seller's breaches. Now I will talk about the conclusion. In summary, Wood Create Ltd repeatedly failed to meet its contractual obligations. The goods supplied did not fully match the agreed description. The quantities delivered were inaccurate, and the packaging requirements were not complied with. Most importantly, these breaches occurred on more than one occasion rather than being a single isolated mistake. The repeated failures have weakened the contractual relationship and reduced in future performance. Therefore, Bob Decor Ltd is likely entitled to reject the goods, refuse the final installment, terminate the contract, and recover damage for any losses incurred. Thank you.